Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for the Tech Guy is provided by Cachefly. CACHEFLY.com. Hi, this is Leo Laporte, and this is my Tech Guy podcast. This show originally aired on October 16th, 2011. We were at PACIFICON, the ham conference in Santa Clara, California, so get ready for some ham talk. This is episode 814. Enjoy. Well, a good day to you. Leo Laporte here, the Tech Guy. And it's time to talk tech. Yeah! Oh, my goodness. That noise you hear is a bunch of hams. We're actually broadcasting live from Santa Clara, California today at the PACIFICON Ham Fest, big ham convention. They have them all the time. This is one of the biggest ones on the West Coast. In fact, next year they'll be home to the National Ham Convention. Hams are, for those of you who don't know, not smoked meats, but in fact amateur radio operators. And you know what? There's 750,000 of them in the U.S. It is a very active hobby, not dead at all, as I learned to my shame, because for a long time I thought, well, if you got a cell phone and you got Skype, what do you need ham radio for? Well, this guy convinced me otherwise. Gordon West is here, one of the best-known Elmers in the business. Hey, Gordon.
Hey, Leo. Good morning. Welcome to Ham.
It's great. Thank you. WB6NOA. Gordy runs a school for hams, teaches them the basics of getting a ham license. And you've graduated how many hams now? Do you know?
We have, and it's been exciting with all the different ham radio operators that we've licensed and we see here. And they're all out there looking at us now, Leo, and what a great time, and welcome to your biggest audience right now around you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, they'll be, and we're going to meet them in just a little bit, there are very young hams. We've got a couple of girls, one who's really young, like 10 or 11, who has her technician's license. And that's Katie, and then Andrea, who is a little bit older, and I think she's even more advanced, isn't she? It's pretty amazing. This is a hobby for everybody. You learn a lot about radio, you learn a lot about electronics, and nowadays you learn a lot about digital technology too. There's a lot of digital technology in ham these days.
It is, and you know, kids do such a great job of mastering the test. Then they jump right in. They have no fear. In fact, they learn the Morse code, although Morse code is no longer required. All hams know the Morse code, right? Yeah. So
wait a minute, that's the ... dash dash
yeah,
stuff,
that
right? ...
dash dash, and the kids eat it up. So you're right. Here at the ham convention, probably what 6 or 7 years old, up to 60 and 70 years old.
Oh, there's older than that. There's people in their 90s here.
Oh my goodness.
It's pretty impressive. They've been 104. Is that the oldest ham here today? No, you don't look a day over 103, dear. Anyway, we're going to continue to talk about technology, as always, at 8888 Ask Leo and answer your questions and so forth. But I thought it'd be fun to kind of come here and meet some people who really are out there, you may not know, helping you in emergencies. They're people who've developed a lot of the technologies we use today on cell phones with packet radio. They were the first, in fact, to allow you, using their patch capability, to make phone calls from your phone anywhere in the world via ham radio. So they've done some amazing stuff, and they continue to break new ground. So it's kind of fun to be here with these pioneers of the electronics industry. And I include you, Gordo.
Oh, they are, and I meet them all the time, and it's great for all that they have done for us in ham radio, from the early days of phone patch, long before cell phones,
That's right. Yeah.
Ham radio.
I want to also introduce Rod Stafford, who's here. He is the secretary of the International Association.
International Amateur
Radio Union. So there's a national organization, the Amateur Radio Relay League, ARRL.org, that kind of governs and supports ham radio in the U.S. But, of course, ham radio is not just in the U.S. It's an international hobby.
That's right. There's probably in excess of 2 million amateurs around the world. And the American Radio Relay League, the ARRL, is the national society in the United States. But all of the developed countries have a national society. And there's 162 national societies that are members of the IARU, or the International Amateur Radio Union.
Ham is big in Japan. There's hundreds of thousands of hams in Japan, I know.
Yes, there are.
Maybe millions. How many, do you know?
I don't know what the latest figure is. There has been in the past just a couple million hams in
one of the reasons is that technical education in Japan, in their high schools, they required you, until recently, to have some sort of electronics skill, and ham was the most popular of those electronic skills. It was also for them a great way to learn other languages, most importantly English.
Well, yeah, and plus the fact, we all as human beings like to communicate, so whenever you get a chance to communicate, it's a great idea.
Well, nobody likes to communicate more than ham radio. Gordo, they call that rag chewing, don't they?
That's right.
Yeah.
On and on and on.
Although it's interesting because there's all sorts of ham radio, and some of the ham operators here are what we call DXers, and they don't talk at all, do they? Or they're very, very quickly. Tell me about DXing a little bit.
Well, DXing is ham radio's spirit. Contesting at its very best. Some do it on computers, some do it on a straight key, some do it on an automatic key.
That's the Morse code stuff.
Yeah, the dotted business. And voice, digital modes are very popular, so we've got plenty of DXers that try and work every country in the world.
That's the goal, is to hear how now there's DXCC, which is the 100 countries, but there's more than 100 countries in who are ham operators, right, Rod? I mean,
there's, over the years, of course, some of the countries, like you remember we used to have East and West Germany.
Right, that was two at one time,
exactly.
Not anymore. Yeah.
Now it's just one country. So there are people, some of the longtime DXers that work both of those.
Right.
And everybody, of course, it's a very competitive endeavor, and you try to be what they say, top of the honor roll.
Right.
And so whenever a new country comes on, like Southern Sudan,
you want to be the first.
You want to be there. You don't want to be left out of that.
But and that's not generally not a conversation. It's merely I hear you, you hear me. I've got you. Bingo. Right. I mean, it's pretty quick.
And a lot of other folks waiting to work that same country. Rod, how many countries do we have now?
300 plus. Yeah,
wow.
I think top of the honor roll is like 355, but some of those have gone away, of course.
So are the ham radio frequencies the same around the world, or do they vary, Rod? How does that work?
Well, actually, I used to, when I give a forum or a talk about ham radio and the IARU, I'd ask people to raise their hand if they thought the FCC was the agency that gave us our frequencies in the U.S., and of course everybody raised their hands, but it's actually an international organization, an agency of the United Nations called the ITU.
The International Telecommunications Union.
Correct. And they basically plan the use of the entire radio spectrum. So they plan uses for all sorts of things, including ham radio. So
spectrum's not unlimited.
Unfortunately, no.
So you have to, it's almost like territory, right? You have to plot out, this is where we are, this is where you are, this is where emergency services are, for instance. This is where broadcast radio, like we're on today, is. Each of them have their own area of the radio frequencies that they can use. How much of that goes to amateur radio?
Well, we have little slices of the spectrum all the way from hopefully soon to be around 500 kilohertz. That's on the agenda for a meeting next year, all the way up into the microwave frequencies and above. So there's little slices of spectrum.
500 kilohertz is just right below AM radio,
exactly.
Isn't it?
Yeah. There's spectrum throughout the radio spectrum that we have allocations that we can use for experimentation purposes and just chatting with people.
And we should say it isn't just chatting. As you said, there's Morse code, but there's also television. They have slow scan and fast scan TV. They're doing data packets. There's all kinds of stuff on this spectrum.
And in fact, they had fast scan television of skydivers yesterday.
That's fast.
Yeah, that is fast.
And there are even hams communicating with the International Space Station, with satellites, and even bouncing their signals off the moon.
Off the moon, yep.
It's a really interesting hobby, and I have to say, as a new ham, and I thanks to you, Gordo, I just got my license a few months ago. I've really enjoyed discovering more and more about it and finding out about all the areas. And I think one of the things new amateur radio operators kind of have to decide is what area they want to participate in. And there's so much you can do.
I tell you, if you're interested in technology, you're interested in people, I can't imagine that there's a whole bunch of little niches within amateur radio that should attract you.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
So, and we should also mention, people probably say, well, what about CB? Is that the same thing as amateur radio? That's kind of an unlicensed form of
It's an
amateur
unlicensed
radio.
service.
Now it's called Family Radio Service.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break, come back with more. We are PACIFICON in Santa Clara. We're talking about ham radio, but also about tech. Give me a ring. 8888 Ask Leo. Leo Laporte, the tech guy.
A3QIZ. Do you read me?
Seymour, isn't it about time you made a real friend?
Mother, please. I'm communicating with my fellow hams.
Leo Laporte, the tech guy from PACIFICON, the big ham fest in Santa Clara, California, going on right now. And we were talking with Gordon West and Rod Stafford about niches, and here's a unique ham niche. Mark Meltzer is here. He is a ham who transmits and receives while parachuting. Mark, are you nuts? What? Tell me. So you actually bring gear with you as you jump out of airplanes?
Yes, Leo. We have a team, and it includes a number of jumpers and also ham radio operators who are not jumpers. And we combine ham radio and skydiving and have a lot of unique equipment with us, not only just voice communications, but data relayed from sensors on our body. We have a GPS sensor that gives in real time to APRS receiving stations, and then it's automatically posted on the internet. Gives our position, altitude, course speed, and then we have physiologic sensors that give the jumper heart rate and blood oxygen level in real time.
So you can see how nervous Mark is. Now, how many stations have you managed to talk to in a single jump?
Well, my record is 39 in a single jump. That was at the Radio Fest in Monterey. We exited at 18,000 feet, which was really, really high to go without oxygen, but I free fell down to 16,000 feet so that I wouldn't be hypoxic. Opened at 16,000 and worked 39 stations before I got down to the approach level where I had to stop talking.
Mark, it's a pleasure to meet you at
Thank you, Leo.
AF6IM, Parachute Mobile.
And our website is parachutemobile.org. We have a website with lots of information. We welcome new members. You don't have to jump to be a member. Just be enthusiastic.
So you have more than just you do this.
Oh,
you're
yes.
you're not the only nut. Parachutemobile.org. Mark's going to give a presentation in a few minutes. Thank you for coming by. I really appreciate it. Doesn't that illustrate exactly what we were talking about, Gordon, about how many different things you can do with ham radio? I mean, I don't know what the... And this is the thing I learned. It's not about utility. It's not about... I mean, there is a certain value, which we'll get to in ham radio, but it's also the fun of it. I mean, there's no utility in jumping out of an airplane and making 39 radio contacts, is there?
That's right. Yep.
Just for fun.
That's right. With ham radio, you never know who you're going to meet, too.
It might be a guy at 16,000 feet.
That's it. And it's so much fun because every new contact is a new friend. And when you next go to another part of the world, Leo, there's that friend waiting for you at the airport.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's,
Rod,
Leo,
go ahead. Rod.
That's why in spite of all the internet so forth, the ham radio continues to be something that attracts the interest of a lot of people and continues to grow.
In my opinion, more so. Because if you start to get technical, then you want to know more about how things work. You know, one of the things I think is a shame and that I really promote is we use technology without even understanding it. And I think it's really important that we not grow up a generation of people who can't fix this, invent this, and know how it works. So it's really important to get kids in school doing stuff like this so they understand electronics, they understand digital, they understand data, so that they can invent the next generation of cool stuff.
There's Gordon knows a lot of people that have done this, and so do I. The people that became amateurs as young individuals and then got into the electronics industry, started companies and so forth because of their interest in technology that was started through ham radio.
Well, I'll mention a name, Steve Wozniak,
Oh,
the guy who
sure.
invented
Absolutely.
the Apple computer, in fact, was a ham first. And many of the hackers and inventors, the people I have met, it's so funny because then they find out I'm a ham. They go, oh, I'm a ham. Oh, I'm a ham. Gordon West Radio School is GordonWestRadioschool.com. He has taught thousands how to do this. If you're at all interested, visit his website or also W5YI, which is where I went to get Gordon's materials. It's W5YI.org. I got his CDs. That's how I learned. I listened in the car, read the books, and I was ready to take the test. You don't have to do Morse code anymore. It's easy. And once you get the test, it's not expensive to become a ham, is it?
That's it. Yeah, the tests are multiple choice.
Yep.
And no essay questions, no dots and dashes, and just you have a whole bunch of hams just waiting for you to graduate, as
That's
you can
the
see.
neat thing, is there is this whole culture, they call it Elmering, of people who take you under their wing and show you. And you do need that, because even if you've passed the test, as I have, that first broadcast, that first transmission it's scary, and you need to learn a little bit of the culture and the etiquette. But you don't have to spend a lot of money, do you, Gordon? It's not expensive.
They've got handhelds here, dual band for about $100.
That's all you need.
Yeah, and they can talk literally around the country via the WIN system or IRLP or Echolink.
These
or
are all digital
D-Star.
repeater systems that take your signal and send it all around the country.
That's it.
Yeah, really neat. Rod, let's put in a plug for the IARU, but also more importantly to support your local amateur radio league, right?
Absolutely. The IARU, of course, is made up of national societies, and I get questions occasionally, how can I join the IARU? Well, individuals don't become members, but the way that you can support the effort is to become a member and remain a member of your national society. So you join, if you're in the U.S., join the ARRL, if you're in England, the RSGB, and so forth.
Yeah.
And that's the way that you support our effort.
You get the magazine, you get all the interesting events like this. It's a whole society of great people.
I will say something. Gordon is a great teacher. My 9-year-old granddaughter got her license in one of his classes. Yeah, about 5 years ago. It was great.
Really neat. Rod Stafford, great to see you. W6ROD. And Gordon, great to see you again. Gordon, westradioschools.com. And we'll see you on the air, WB6NOA. Yep. Thank you. Hey, I'm going to bring Bill Ruck up here in just a second and talk about how they're using an ancient system to communicate across the ocean. Before we do, though, I'm going to take a call or two because, after all, that's what I'm here for, to help you with your technology woes. And John is first in San Diego, California. Hi, John. Leo Laporte, the tech guy.
Hey, Leo, how you doing?
I'm great. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Hey, I've been trying to email photographs. I took a picture at an air show of a guy's plane, and he really liked it. I emailed him a 2.5 megabyte picture, and he gets a 50 kilobyte. What he receives is 50 kilobytes.
Yeah. Sending that's a large picture. Some email systems, it's less so nowadays, but in the old days would only allow 10 megabytes for all your inbox. So a 2.5 megabyte picture is pretty big. It may be that your internet service provider or his internet service provider don't allow such big pictures. It may even be your operating system. Nowadays, a lot of operating systems kind of don't like to do attachments. Because that's how, as you probably know, viruses get spread, and it's a risky thing. You know what I like to do with pictures is put them on a website and then send the guy the link. And there are lots of places you can do this. Flickr is a great choice. It's free to join. It's a Yahoo site, FLICKR.com. So what I would do, John, is, you can make them private. You don't have to let anybody see it but the guy you're sending it to. But upload it to the website. And then send him a link. Otherwise, what you'll want to do is squeeze it down. It shouldn't be more, if you're emailing a picture, more than 100 or 200 kilobytes is really too big.
Really? Okay. Well, I have a Flickr site.
Yeah, just put it on Flickr.
That he could make a decent print with.
Well, that's exactly why you'd use Flickr, is upload the original to Flickr. And you can give him permission to download the original. That is way too big to email. That's all it is. It's just saying, hey, that's too big. I can't handle that.
Yeah, well, the original is 47 megabytes. So a bit.
You can upload that to Flickr, or for something that big, I would try something like Dropbox. Do you know about Dropbox?
I've heard Dropbox, yeah.
Yeah, it's free. It's 2 gigabytes for free. Dropbox.com. There are other places like that. When Microsoft has its own called SkyDrive, it's free storage. You just put it there. You send him a link. It's completely private. If it's something that big, that's probably the best thing to do. Then he gets all 47 megabytes.
Yeah, well, he doesn't need that big a picture.
Well, give it to him. Why not?
2.5's good enough. He's really liking it.
Thanks, John. I appreciate the call. 8888 Ask Leo. More calls to come in a moment. We're going to talk to an old friend of mine, Bill Ruck, about the Marconi station here in the Bay Area. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. You might hear a little rumble behind me. That's a bunch of ham radio operators. They're rag chewing. That's what they call it. It is PACIFICON, which is a big ham radio convention going on now in Santa Clara, California, at the Marriott down here. And I thought I'd come down here because for a couple of reasons. First of all, I am a new ham. In the last few months, took the test, got some gear, been having fun learning it. But the more I talk about ham, both on this show and on my podcast, the more people I meet who are hams, especially in the technology industry. It turns out that's how a lot of people who invented the future, People like Steve Wozniak learned about electronics in the first place, got excited about it in school, and then went on to do some amazing things. Joining me right now, a fellow I've known for years, didn't know you were a ham, although almost every radio station chief engineer in the world is a ham radio operator at one point or another. Bill Ruck, who for many years was a chief engineer at KNBR in San Francisco. It's great to see you, Bill. You're still working in radio, but it's kind of a different kind, isn't it?
Well, nothing is the same as it was. So, but I'm very much stuck now in radio history, which is even more fun than current radio.
When you ask somebody who invented radio, people say Marconi. I don't know if that's true.
It depends on how you define invented. Marconi was the first person to realize you could make money with radio.
When they first came up with radio, the whole idea, they didn't think of it as a broadcast medium, did they? It was considered kind of ship to shore?
Originally it was a scientific experiment, and they had no idea of what they could do with it.
Right.
And that's where Marconi was the first to say, I can make money having people pay me to send messages without wires. And
to ships at sea and things like that?
Actually, point-to-point was the first business model.
Really?
Was across the Atlantic Ocean.
Now, there are Marconi stations all over the U.S., aren't there?
Well, no, Marconi built a station on the East Coast and a station on the
West Coast. Okay. Where's the East Coast one?
East Coast station was
probably like Cape Cod or somewhere, right? It's got to be on the ocean.
Along Cape Cod, but it went through several iterations and ultimately became part of RCA. But the reason why I'm here is that I'm part of the Maritime Radio Historical Society. And what we do is we honor the skills and traditions of the marine radio operator, which is radio going back to Marconi, definitely even older than that. And the thing that you got to remember is that in 1880, for example, a ship would sail from San Francisco for Tokyo. It would disappear for 6 or 8 weeks.
No communication at all.
No communication at all. Because you're at sea. Maybe it would show up, maybe it wouldn't. Ships were lost.
Right.
And so when radio came along and the ship was able to communicate, A, it improved the safety of the ship, and B, the ship owner said, oh, if I divert the ship over to that port, I can make more money. So radio communications became critical to the maritime industry turn of the century.
And this Marconi station that you're working on, where is that located?
We're actually, the transmitters are in Bolinas, and the receivers are now in Point Reyes.
In Northern California, right on the...
Marin County.
Marin County, on the west coast there.
The very west coast, yes.
And what are the... I mean, this is the same station that they used in the 1900s?
Well, actually, the history of our station goes back to 1905, when some men put a radio station on the air from the Palace Hotel.
In San Francisco?
In San Francisco, and that's where the letters PH came from, because that was the Palace Hotel. There was no K's, because the FCC didn't exist until 1932, so they went on the air, and...
You didn't have to get a license, you just did it.
You just did it. Well, then April 1906, they had a problem.
Yeah, a little earthquake happened.
It kind of burned to the ground, so they built another station, and that didn't work out well, so they moved out to what's now called Daly City, called Hillcrest, and operated from Hillcrest, until the Marconi company said, hey, wait a minute, we have patents and you're violating them, and so they took over KPH about 1910.
And it's not a broadcast station.
No, this was ship to shore.
Ship to shore. And how long did it continue to operate from 1910?
Operated until, well, it's actually sort of still operating today, but it operated from those areas until 1997.
Wow, very recently.
Yeah.
Have you kind of brought it back to life?
Well, the nice thing is that in the process of the technology changing, because that's technology that we're talking about here, it went from hand-operated Morse codes, the skills of the people, to something more automatic.
So in the early days of Marconi, it was dots and dashes. It wasn't voice.
It required the skill of an operator.
Yeah, and there's a lot of skill in that. Believe me, it's not easy.
Well, the nice thing was that it became part of the Park Service. So the National Park Service, Point Reyes National Seashore, has the facility, and the Maritime Radio Historical Society are partners with the Park Service, and we operate the station for benefit of everybody, and we're following a tradition that goes back to 1905.
Now, is it for special events? What do you do with it?
We talk to ships Saturday.
No kidding.
Saturday we talk to several ships.
They must feel like they're talking to a ghost.
Well, no, this is a real thing. You know, we are an active commercial Morse station, and any ship can contact us, and we'll be happy to return their calls.
That's great.
So, but this is this long tradition of the skill and the technology necessary to do that.
Is it using a modern transmitter, or is it
fairly modern? Although we do have our oldest transmitter in service. It dates back to the mid-40s. Wow. We're in the process of restoring a transmitter called BL11. Dates back to the late 30s. So we're going to make it work and put it on the air just because we can.
It's really fun.
So, and I would like to invite anybody that's interested in radio and the history of radio and the history of the west coast of Marin to come out on every Saturday noon to 4. We're open the receive station out in Point Reyes on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Head out towards the lighthouse when you see the signs for NDOC, and you go down and park at the end there, and come out and see us operate a Morse code station. And
That's really cool.
Anybody that's Morse qualified can sit at one of our operating positions and operate K6 KPH, and we're operating on all the amateur radio bands using the original equipment from our CA.
Wow. See, this is one of the things I love about this is I bet you get a lot of kids out there. Parents bring in their kids. This is a great way to turn. We're always looking for a way to turn kids onto this stuff.
Definitely.
Both history and technology. And there's something about this that does, not every kid, but captures some kids' imaginations. Their eyes light up.
They come out, and we've had a few kids that had to be pried away kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
We're having so much fun.
It's so interesting.
Just yesterday, we had somebody brought some kids by and was showing them Morse code, and they were sending very badly and very slowly Morse code on our station because we've been operating from PACIFICON for the last 2 days.
In some ways, Morse code is the original digital technology.
I like to tell people that analog was a passing fad, but Marconi was sending digital information.
Well, it's binary. It's a dot or it's a dash, and it's the combination of dots and dashes that make the alphabet.
It's a slightly different technique than what we're doing today, but it was digital
Not
on
so
and
very
off
different.
transmissions. And
Yeah.
So the history of radio has been digital going back to before Marconi.
Well, Samuel F.B. Morse, who was
that wasn't radio, that was wireline.
Yeah, he was a failed painter who had noticed that the French were sending messages with semaphores, with lights.
Mm-hmm.
He said, that's kind of slow because you have to see the light, write it down, then send it on. He figured out how to do it over wires, and he thought about the original dots and dashes.
He built the original internet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, we all think about all this new stuff. A lot of it goes back in history. And so all of the technology we have today, you can trace it back to
Absolutely.
people like Morse and Marconi and a whole bunch of other people. But one of the things that is kind of interesting, and I'm emphasizing the word skill, okay, because that's something we're losing in a lot of technology today, the required skill. The radio operators from Marconi would sat and they would use international Morse code to send messages on the radio, but to go from the receive site in Marshall into the network in the United States, they used American Morse code, which is different.
It's different?
These guys were bilingual in Morse code. They could do American Morse code and international Morse code alternately back and forth.
Wow.
That really takes skill.
I want to get over here, the Cal Poly Amateur Radio Club. Just come over here, a couple of you guys, just to show that there are young people doing this. You guys are at Cal Poly?
Yeah, that's correct. Cal Poly Amateur Radio Club down in San Luis Obispo.
That's great. And Cal Poly, of course, a great technical school. How big is the amateur radio club there?
We're at about 30 folks right now. Javen O'Neill, KF7H9, is the current president. I'm running as co-advisor right now. I ran the club for the last 3 years.
Do you find that kids come to school and they don't know anything about it and then suddenly fall in love with it, or a lot of your kids hams already?
Very few folks actually come in as hams. We've recently started a freshman licensing initiative with the Electrical Engineering Department at Cal Poly. This year, all the freshman electrical engineers are getting their licenses. So November 4th, we're licensing 196 new
Oh, that's fantastic. CPARC, you go, guys. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. More of your calls coming up right after this.
Well, even put signs up on the road, and my heart is beating Morris code.
Leo Laporte, the tech guy. 8888 Ask Leo. I'm broadcasting live from PACIFICON, which is a ham radio convention going on right now in Santa Clara, California at the Marriott. It's one of a couple of very big conventions. Next year, this will be the National Ham Radio Convention. We're talking a little bit about amateur radio because I think it's a very interesting, exciting field. Coming up at the top of the hour, about 11:06, we're going to talk to Katie and Andrea. Katie is 11 years old, got her license when she was 9. Andrea also got her license with 9. She's now at Georgia Tech, and I think they're a great example of how ham is not only a great way to learn about technology, but a great way for girls to feel a part of this technological revolution too. Katie and Andrea will be joining us in a little bit, but meanwhile, back to the phone, send Arleta, California. It's Lewis on the line. Hi, Lewis. Whoop, let me press the button right here. I'm in a remote facility, and I think I've got it. Hey, Lewis, Leo Laporte, the tech guy.
You.
I'm great, Lewis. Thanks for calling.
I'm one of your blind followers who enjoys listening and learning constantly from your shows.
Thank you. And I understand you're a ham as well.
AB6EYC, I need to reactivate my license, though.
You better. You better now. Now, do you think there are a lot of blind ham radio operators? I bet there are.
You betcha.
Yeah. I mean, what a great way to communicate, to stay in touch, and to meet people all in the comfort of your own home.
Absolutely, and some of them are the fastest Morse code keyers you could find. I tell you, there's some guys that just blow me away.
Oh, I bet. You know, the more I learn about Morse code, that ... the more I realize it's really like a language. You have to hear the music of it, not the dots and dashes, but the actual sounds of it.
You get used to listening for a pattern.
Yeah, it's like music. It's very interesting. So I'm not surprised that blind ham operators are very good at Morse codes. But what can I do for you, Louis?
I have a question for you, Leo. I'm also involved with the FCC's 21st Century Communications Act, and I'm working on the accessibility stuff regarding set-top boxes, TVs, and the like of those devices. And
Bless you, Louis. That's fantastic.
I've been enjoying researching it and also being very involved with providing input to some of the manufacturers. But I have recently spent a great deal of time playing around with both Apple TV, which is very limiting, and also looking at Android's, Google TV using Android, and I'm really fascinated with how much, whether Google intended it or not, it is the most functional thing out there, which is in par with what the FCC wants to make sure that it is provided for the disabled community.
Well, that's very interesting. You know, this is something that people don't think about. We have the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, which requires accessibility in stores and in businesses. But people forget that, you know, if you are disenfranchised when it comes to telecommunications and digital technology, that's maybe in some ways even worse, because this is, of course, how we communicate with one another. So I'm glad the FCC has this act. The idea is to make and these were passed in the 80s and 90s, kind of the ADA for telephone and television and digital technologies.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I found out is, you know, in playing, and I got a couple of people interested in looking into this as well, but one of the things that I'm having an issue trying to convince people, and I'm calling you to see if you can clarify for me one thing. And this has to do with when the consumer plugs in third-party devices like TiVo boxes or DVD/DVR boxes, and any of those devices, when they're plugged into the TV, do those devices have any control over the video or the audio, or is that primarily controlled by the TV? Because on the Android box or the Sony, the Sony TV, everything is the audio primarily. And being blind, I'm focused more on the audio. But I know that there's people with partial vision that want to use screen magnification, so I have to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you about the Google TV. And by the way, I think it's interesting to hear that Google TV is very accessible. I like to know that. That was a little bit of a disappointment. You know, Logitech makes one, Sony makes one. The Logitech device was $300. They dropped it to $99 because nobody was buying it. But it's not dead yet, because I think Google could really turn it into a true Android device, put the marketplace on there, and it could be a very powerful, maybe the most powerful television connection. The way the Google TV works is it's HDMI pass-through. So the signal comes out of your satellite box or your cable box into the Google TV, and then from the Google TV into your regular television, which, to answer your question, Louis, means it absolutely can modify the video and the audio. In fact, that's how it works, because it imposes on top of the video things like Twitter and access to a website and so forth. They actually can superimpose it on top of the video. That's exactly how it works. That's not how all these devices work, but it is how the Google TV works. It kind of merges your television signal with the internet. And I think in the long run, for your purposes, Louis, that's probably going to be the best area of attack, especially since it's open source. The Google Android operating system is open source. So what we need to do is put pressure on Google to open source the Google TV stuff, to open it up to the Google Marketplace, and to let people know, programmers especially, know how you can take that HDMI signal, modify it on its way to your television set to make it accessible. Things like screen readers, all of that, in theory, you can do, absolutely. Hey, let's get to Bob in Sebastopol, California, our next caller. Hey, Bob, Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Hey, Bob.
I liked your topic today with your ham operators.
Thank you.
Well, actually, about 35 years ago, I gave a faculty lecture at Santa Rosa Junior College on the growth of electricity and dealing with electronics, and it brought back memories.
Well, it's
Anyhow,
a shame because I don't think kids learn this anymore, and I think they need to, or we're not going to have any innovation in 10, 20 years.
they think everything we have happened by chance.
Yeah, it just sprung out of them, sprung whole out of the minds of Wozniak and Apple. Not true.
Right. Anyhow, we have web TV. I presume you're familiar with that.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Now, what bothers me is we can receive email letters that don't even have our address on it.
That's interesting.
Now, in fact, the other day we got a very disturbing one, and which was a death threat, as the producer or you mentioned.
Yeah.
Completely anonymous. Now, it did not name us personally.
Okay, that's good. That's good because it probably doesn't have anything to do with you, I would hope.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Even though it did not have the from and the to on there, how in the heck will that web TV let that thing pass? What good is having an address?
Well, that's a good question, and Web TV, of course, was sold to Microsoft, which has basically put it out of business. I mean, they're not doing it anymore. You have a kind of a legacy device, which is no longer supported. To be honest, I don't really understand how Web TV could possibly get email to you without an address, unless they have some sort of broadcast feature, and I don't know of that. And unfortunately, I don't even know if there's anybody to talk to anymore. I don't know if Microsoft's even supporting that thing. Do you have a phone number you can call?
So I did call technical support, and I could not get any kind of a decent answer because
they probably don't know.
Oh no,
they don't know anything.
No, but
first let me say, and let me step back. If anybody ever gets on the internet a threat that puts them in fear of their life, that is illegal, and you absolutely should go to the authorities. You went to the FBI. Good on you. It is interstate commerce, so that's the right agency. I've had the same thing happen to a family member. We went to the local police. They were very helpful. There are rules for when it has to have a concrete threat, and you have to have it be in a legitimate fear for your safety and so forth. And I'm sure the FBI told you this before they'll pursue it. We weren't able to get the FBI to help, but we did get our local police to help and, in fact, track the person down. So do take that seriously. I have to say, though, the fact that it's not got your name on it that was broadcast, that makes me feel a little bit better about it. Let me see if I can do some investigation and find out. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Well, a good day to you. Leo Laporte here, the tech guy. And we're talking about, well, tech. Computers, the internet, cell phones, camcorders, MP3 players, home theater, and the like. Phone number is 8888 Ask Leo. If you have a question, a comment, or a suggestion. But I got to tell you, we're not taking as many calls today because we are at PACIFICON, which is a great conference. Pacificon.org if you want to know more, of ham radio operators, amateur radio operators. Somebody asked me, do they mind being called hams? You don't mind being called hams, I don't think. No, they're proud to be hams. Amateur radio is alive and thriving in the U.S. There are 750,000 amateur radio operators at last count in the U.S., millions all over the world. And it's a way to not only communicate with other people using a radio, and that's, people might say, well, what do you need that for? We got cell phones, we got Skype. More importantly, you learn how electronics works. You learn how analog electronics works. You learn how digital technology works. Packet radio was the precursor to data over cell phone networks. The internet really began with hams. It is, in fact, kind of where the proving grounds for technology. And so I think it's very important to celebrate ham radio and to let people know it's not obsolete. It's not out of date. And in fact, I can think of two more inspiring people in that regard than the two young ladies sitting right next to me right now. Katie Stenstrud, K7 KTI. She's 11, but you got your license at how old were you when you got your license, Katie? You were 9? Wait a minute, let me push the button. So Leo doesn't know how to use the radio. Now you do it.
I was 9 when I got my tech.
Wow.
And then I actually got my general last May.
So you're a general class license. There are 3 classes of ham radio license: technician, general, and then extra. Are you going to study for extra at some point?
I don't know, but right now, no, I don't want to get my extra.
What do you do on the radio? What is your hobby with ham? What do you like to do?
my dad and I, we do a lot of contesting, and we also volunteer for like rally races and foot races doing communications.
A lot of people don't realize that hams are often the people who do the radio system for bicycle and races, right? Yeah. Your dad's right over here. Leif is KF7AMY. Nice to see you. You must be very proud of Katie. That's really neat. It's kind of nice that you and your dad can do that together.
Oh yes, it's definitely a hobby that we do together, and he's had his license long before me, so I sort of got in after he got his.
Are you learning Morse code?
Yes, I am.
You're kidding.
No.
Can you do it now?
Yes. My name is Katie. Dit.
That's great.
K-A-T-I.
I love it. Also joining us, Andrea Hartledge. She's KG4IUM. Andrea also got her license at the age of 9. That was 11 years ago. And now she is a senior at Georgia Tech studying aeronautics and space science. So nice to see you, Andrea.
Good to see you.
Do you think being a ham helped you get into Georgia Tech and get into technology?
Most definitely. I think without it, I'm not sure where I would have ended up. So I wasn't as interested in science or technology until I got my ham license. And then actually an award I won through ham radio gave me a free trip to space camp, which is where I got the idea to major in aerospace engineering.
There's one thing I think ham is really important for is to get young women into science and technology. It's an easy way to get introduced to it, and you learn a lot, don't you?
Absolutely.
Why did you become a ham at the age of 9?
I was actually 11.
11.
When I got my license, and
So Katie's got you beat.
Yeah, she does, by a couple of years. My dad got his license before me, and it was actually a funny story. He came home and he had a scanner, and he was listening to police and firefighters. It's like, oh, that's really cool. You can listen to the police. And then he changed it to the ham bands, and at first I was like, why would you want to listen to ham?
Who wants to talk to these guys? Yeah.
And then I went to field day, and I helped him out with the Peachtree Road Race, and then I got more interested and finally took the test and got my license.
I think it's often the case that young people get into it because their folks are hams, right?
Right.
And they want them. Well, it saves money on cell phone bills, right? Do you carry a handy talkie around?
I do.
Yeah.
I have one in my backpack.
That's awesome. What do you like to do in ham radio?
I like to try and get more young people involved, actually. So having programs to promote youth involvement is kind of my big thing. And I guess my newest thing is serving on the ARRL board.
You're on the board?
Yes.
The Amateur Radio Relay League. That's really neat. That's really great. You must be easily the youngest person on the board, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. So Katie and Andrea are both hams, both young people, both women. And I think that you're kind of, can I say poster girls for what ham radio can mean? And I think that, when you go to a ham fest, it's mostly, let's face it, older guys, right? So we want to get more young people and fewer people like me into this hobby, don't you think, Katie? Are you telling girls your age? What grade are you in school?
I'm in 6th grade.
Do you tell other 6th graders to become hams?
You can't force someone to become hams, but yes, I do have some friends who when they saw me working on the radio when we were hanging out at my house, now they're studying to get their license.
That's neat. I think you're right. You obviously you can't force somebody to do it, but you can get them excited about it. What do you think? What would be a good way if people wanted to kind of find out more about this for them to get excited about it?
If people want to find out more about ham radio, there are thousands of websites and there are websites that have really good practice tests.
Is that how you studied?
Yes, when I studied, I mostly did A9PW.com practice tests.
Yeah, I did. I think hamtest.org. But you're right. There's dozens of these sites, and it makes it a lot easier to take the test. But I like it that you're learning Morse code. Andrea, you also you had to learn CW, didn't you?
I did.
For your license.
Yeah.
Do you ever use it?
Every now and then, mostly for straight key night, and I'm a little slow, but I enjoy it when I have the time.
That's the other thing. There's all these events. There's a lot of social stuff going on around this. There's a lot of events. There's fox hunting. There's DX contests. There's field day. What is field day? You mentioned field day.
Field day is a 24-hour preparedness exercise. So essentially, ham radio operators go out and set up in a public place, typically a park or somewhere like that, and they set up all their own equipment, generators, solar panels, their own power, so they're not relying on anything, and then they operate and make as many contacts as they can in 24 hours. So it's a fun exercise because you're trying to compete and make as many contacts as possible, but it's also lets you prepare to bring everything on your own in an emergency.
That was something we didn't talk about or haven't talked about yet, but emergency preparedness is a big part of what ham radio is all about, is being there when phone and internet and power are gone. The hams can continue to communicate and often do help in emergencies and tornadoes and hurricanes and tsunamis and the like. Are you a member of an emergency preparedness service?
Yeah, I've been involved in ARES, which is Amateur Radio Emergency Service.
That's neat. Katie, do you want to do that too as you get older? You're a member?
Yes.
Wow. What are you a member of, ARES or RACES or? Amateur Radio Emergency Services, ARES. Well, that's really neat. Andrea and Katie, it's great to meet you. You are an inspiration for everybody. They said Katie's the next Andrea, but I do you want to do science and technology when you go to college? It's a little early to decide that, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I am very interested in math and science. Those are actually my favorite subjects in school.
I love hearing that. It gives you the confidence, doesn't it, Andrea, to when you've been doing this, no longer do you have to say, oh, I don't know if I want to do math, those boys. And you've got some confidence, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. What are you going to do when you graduate?
I'll probably go to grad school and get a master's. I'm leaning towards systems engineering at this point.
All right, right on. Very nice to meet you, Andrea Hartledge. That's KG4IUM. And Katie, is it Stenstrud? Am I saying that right, Katie?
Stenstrud.
Stenstrud, K7KTI.
Yes.
Nice to meet you both. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
The Tech Guy Show. Isn't that inspiring? It's really, really cool. Thank you, guys. We're going to take a break. I will get to the phones once again when we return. 8888 Ask Leo. And we can talk about anything. I am Leo Laporte, the Tech Guy. All right, I give up. Kyle Benham's on a TV theme kick. That's the theme song from Alf. Everybody's favorite rubber alien. Leo Laporte, the Tech Guy. 8888 Ask Leo. That's the phone number. I'm live in Santa Clara at the PACIFICON, which is a ham convention here at the Marriott. Come by and say hi if you're in the area. We've been talking to hams and meeting hams, but I'm still answering calls about all kinds of technology. 8888 Ask Leo. All the information I talk about here and all the websites I've mentioned will be on the website, techguylabs.com, techguylabs.com. And I didn't mention, I should have mentioned, we were talking about the Marconi station they've got operating here on the west coast of California. You can find out more about that at radiomarine.org, radiomarine.org, and that was Bill Ruck was visiting us a little bit earlier talking about that. What's interesting, what you learn is that hams have many, many different areas that they specialize in. It's very interesting. Let's say hi to Lou, who's a regular in our chat room. He's in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. Hey, Lou, Leo Laporte, the Tech Guy.
Hi, Leo. This is my first time calling in.
Well, you've been on in the chat room for months, haven't you?
I'm sorry?
You've been a regular in our chat room for months.
Yes, sir. Lou
Well,
G.
welcome. Welcome. What can I do for you today?
Well, it's my birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And I figured what a better present than to get my ham radio license.
You're kidding. Did you go out and take the test today?
Not yet. I'm going to, though.
That's great.
And you inspired me to do it, Leo.
That's great. So, you know, it is not a hard test. I presume you've been studying for it. It's not as easy as, let's say, a driver's license.
I've been studying. I've been going to all kinds of websites to take pre-tests. But what I wanted to ask you, Leo, was how do I find out where all my local hams are?
How do you find out who your local... Well, the very first thing you should do, and I am no expert, but I'll tell you what they have told me. The very first thing you should do is find your local ham club, because I'll tell you there's very few parts of the country that there isn't a local ham club. I'm blessed because we've got 3 near me. There's a San Francisco club, a club in Santa Rosa. There's the Mount Diablo Amateur Radio Club, and these clubs are fantastic. There are people there who will help you. They will Elmer you, as they say. They'll look over your shoulder. They'll give you advice, and they'll help you buy your first stuff. They'll help you take the test. So go to arrl.org. and you'll find a list there of all the clubs in your area, and that really is the best way. You're going to go to a club probably to take the test, so when you find out where that test is, this is what I did. I took the test, passed the test, and joined the club immediately. That way you get help, and it really is one of those things where taking the test is just the beginning. It's not an easy thing to, even for me, after 35 years talking on the radio. The first time I picked up that microphone, pressed that key to talk on the amateur bands, to transmit on it was scary. You got to have somebody who will help you along. Dan is in Bakersfield, California, our next caller. Hi, Dan. Leo Laporte, the tech guy.
Hey, it's good to talk. I have never called this show before, but I've listened a lot. Thank you for all of your stuff.
Well, thanks for listening, Dan. I appreciate it.
You know, Herbert Johnson was my uncle, and the old-timers will probably remember him as the founder of Swan Electronics and then Atlas Radio Company.
Oh, yeah, I remember those names, of course. Legendary.
Yeah, he was a good guy, and he would make the pilgrimage to visit the rest of the family from Oceanside to Ohio probably once a year, maybe twice a year. And he saw a 10-year-old boy, which was me, and I was really interested in electronics, but I had no money, poor family, and so forth. And so he decided he shipped some equipment. And so he shipped an old Hammerlin receiver and then a bunch of publications so that I could get my novice license. Back in the 70s, you had to know Morse code to even get a novice license.
Right. 5 words a second, right?
Yes. Well,
sorry, 5 words a minute. What am I saying? I don't think anybody do 5 words a second. 5 words a minute, yeah.
Well, that's why I don't know, because I never got it.
You know what? That was a thing that they did, and I think was a smart move. They decided not so long ago to eliminate the requirement that you know Morse code. And I think that was something that kept me out of becoming a ham and a lot of people, because that took a lot to learn. Now, I think it's a good thing still to learn. It's very useful. But it's nice to be able to get the license, get on the air, and start doing it, and not have to know the Morse code, learn the Morse code later. So I think that was a smart move. And by the way, since they did drop that requirement, the number of hams has grown very rapidly. So did you get the license?
I never did. I certainly could get it now, and I just lost interest in anything academic at that point in my life, and it changed over time. And I look back and realized what an opportunity I missed, because he sent me the receiver. He was going to send me the transmitter if I learned the code and got my novice. Well, I got the receiver because that, of course, takes no license. But the interesting thing about this is that this receiver, he claims on one of his visits, was the first receiver to receive a signal bounced off of the moon that he transmitted in a little shack in Arizona, or I think it was New Mexico at the time. And he never got it documented, but it was in the mid-50s, and he was...
I think it's probably accurate. You know, that's one thing that's changed a little bit. Technology's taken such leaps. It's gotten easier and easier to do things like that. And there are radios here. ICOM has a 9100 that's practically designed for moon bounce. You know, they're high-frequency radios. Almost, in many cases, they're mostly microwave that could just bounce a signal off the moon. They bounce signals off of the aurora borealis. I mean, it's amazing what hams are doing. And it's not so much nowadays to innovate, or it was for your grandfather, but nowadays it's just because it's cool to say, hey, yeah, I bounced a signal off the moon. That's cool, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, I think that's great. Let's honor it's your grandfather, right?
It is my uncle. His name
Your
is
uncle, Herbert Johnson.
And there is a whole network called the Swan Network that's dedicated to him, and there's a lot of people that share technical advice on how to repair the old rigs.
Oh, isn't that great? Well, it's nice that you have that history. Thanks for calling, Dan. I appreciate it. Great to talk to you. Jack in Orange County. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Hi, Jack.
Hey, Leo. How you doing?
I am wonderful. Welcome to the show. What can I do for you?
You can walk me through buying my very first computer.
Oh, how exciting. I love helping people get into technology.
Well,
so you've never had a computer? Why do you want to get one now?
Well, probably about the computer, web, and probably music. And probably that's about it, probably.
So music to listen to or to make?
Well, like iPod, download music.
Yeah. And the web's great, and email's fantastic. I mean, those are basic uses.
The point is like listening, just going down to Costco and going to a box store and buying a computer, right?
Yeah, and I don't think that's a good idea. Frankly, to be honest with you, you might not even want a full-bore computer. You might even look at something like an iPad.
Well,
Now I'll tell you a few reasons why. First of all, it's a lot simpler. There's no security issues. You don't have to worry about viruses. They're fairly inexpensive. What I would do, Jack, is go to your local Apple store. There's one near you, and try the iPad and take a look. Now, when we come back, I'll give you some other choices, but I think that's a good place to start. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. We were talking about buying your first computer. Jack's in Orange County. He's never had a computer ever. I said iPad, Jack, and you went, no.
Well, when you get older, your eyesight, I think I would like to have like a little bigger monitor.
Ah, okay, I understand that.
When you're looking, say YouTube, videos or things. I mean, and the printing. I mean, I've used my buddy's iPad before.
All right, so you have some experience with an iPad. You just think it's too small for you.
I think I would like to have a monitor.
All right. I would take a look at then. Be honest with you, a Mac machine, unless you don't like Macs.
Well, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think Macs are a little friendlier to home users. They're more secure. You don't have the issues, and I just like them. I think they're better built. Here are the negatives. I'll give you the negatives. They're more expensive. Apple builds the support into the cost of the computer. Most PC manufacturers don't. So that adds about 50% to the cost of the computer. They also use, I think, better components, higher quality. And that's another reason I think a Mac is worth getting. You get better support. The other negative is for gamers. Macintoshes don't have, although that's changing rapidly, but they have not got the same number of choices for gamers.
Now, how about setup? Just to go into, let's say, a box store. I mean, does the manual that comes with it?
There's no manual with the Mac. It's so easy. You plug it in.
Okay.
You turn it on.
I mean, like the wiring. I mean, we're talking about. Like,
there's no wiring. You plug it in. You turn it on.
Isn't there a monitor and a hard drive and
Yeah, it's all there. You plug it in. You turn it on. This is another reason I recommend the Mac. Now I'm going to suggest an iMac. The monitor and everything is all integral into this one unit. It literally has a plug that you plug into the wall. You'll plug the keyboard into the monitor. You plug the mouse into the keyboard, and you're done.
Then you and then you plug it into a phone line.
Now, getting it online is another matter. Now, you don't just plug it into a phone line.
Okay.
And this is actually the more complicated decision for you is getting online than it is getting the computer.
Okay.
You have really two choices. You can get internet service from your phone company or through the phone lines, and you get internet service through the cable company, through the cable lines.
Right.
The pros and cons on each. Cable's more expensive, tends to be faster, but slower when a lot of people in your neighborhood are using it. That means if everybody's watching Netflix at 7 o'clock at night, the cable slows down a little bit. DSL, which is the phone company internet, will not. DSL's slower, but more consistent, and it's usually less expensive. You can go to your local phone company, or you can go to an internet service provider that's independent, like DSL Extreme. They're a sponsor, and they will get it from the phone, set it up with the phone company. I think DSL Extreme probably be a good start for you.
Okay.
They'll send you everything you need. You plug that into the wall. You plug that into the Mac, and usually there's not a lot of setup involved.
How does your phone work? When you need like a two?
Doesn't affect it. No, doesn't affect it. You'd put a little filter on your phone so that you don't hear anything from the data coming through the phone line, and you can be on the phone and be on the internet at the same time. Doesn't impact it at all.
If your room only has one jack, I mean, you need to get another jack with two outlets then to plug them both in. Let's see, here's a room with a phone.
Yeah, and in that case, you get a splitter. You go to Radio Shack, they're $1, and they'll split it off into two.
Okay. How about a good guide? I know you wrote a book. Does it start?
Yeah, of course, people learn different ways, and a book's a good way to go. I would look for a local user, local user group in your area. I'm sure there's one in your area that's very good, and I would just check with them.
Okay.
You'll find people who it's kind of like the ham thing. They'll find people who are really glad to help you out, especially if it's your first computer.
Right. But buy an iMac. Mac.
That'd be my advice, although you can get a Windows computer cheaper. Depends how much of a hobbyist you want to be. If you want to learn more, get a Windows machine. If you just want to use it, get a Mac.
Great. I appreciate your help, Leo.
Hey, Jack, good luck. Stay in touch. Call back. And let me know how it's going for you. We're here at PACIFICON, the ham convention. My old friend Bill Hillendahl is here. He is the section chief for San Francisco Bay Area for the Amateur Radio Relay League.
Good morning, Leo.
ARRL.org. That's the national organization of
It is the National Association for Amateur Radio. And Leo, while you were talking, I drug in my good friend who I just took one of his seminars, is Don Carlson, KQ6FM, who's on the Public Information, National Public Information Committee, and he can assist with some of the questions I know you're going to ask.
Well, the first question I'm going to ask is, what is this button? Ask Why I DIY with Ham Radio. What is
I
that?
actually just swiped that from Don from his seminar, so I'm going to let Don answer that.
It's a brand new campaign, and do you know what it means?
Yeah, do it yourself.
Do it yourself.
Well, see, I am the kind of ham who took the test, and then Ray Novak at ICOM just gave me, like, all the radios that I could ever want. I bought a handy talkie, and everything else just arrived on my doorstep.
Now, wait a minute. You built a dipole on air.
I did do that.
You built a dipole on air.
So I'm the opposite, and I kind of like what you're saying. You're saying, I take it, that you can build your own stuff.
You can build anything you want.
And you'll learn a lot more when you do that, won't
And
you?
the other thing is, we are on the cutting edge of technology in amateur radio. A lot of people think it's just telegraph keys and people talking back and forth. We're into digital communications, satellite communications. We can talk keyboard to keyboard without the use of the internet and do everything that anybody can imagine doing. Amateur radio is only limited by your imagination. We experiment, we build new things and create new technologies.
There's a lot of experimentation going on. I think that's the thing. I understand you really want to encourage that. Now, we had somebody call in. Lou G said, I'm going to take the exam. What should I do next? What should he do next, Bill?
Absolutely. Once you take the exam, or even before you take the exam, if you're even interested, you can go to the ARRL website, ARRL.org, and you can put in your zip code, and you can find a club or multiple clubs near you. And every club kind of has its own personality. So visit several clubs if they're within an easy distance to you, and join the club that fits your personality and what you want, and you're going to learn from everybody there.
One of the clubs in my neighborhood is they're DXers, so their whole goal is to listen to as many stations as far away as they can as possible.
Oh, it's more than that. That's my home club, and we helped you put your station together.
Yeah, the
down
Redwood
at
Empire
the TWiT.
DX club.
Yeah, Empire DX Association.
Great.
And
but that's one style of ham.
Correct. It's a specialty club that are into DX or long-distance contacts or contesting. So they're kind of a specialty club. But there's also some very good clubs in the area, like the Sonoma County Radio Amateurs. They're more of a generalist club. They offer a little bit of everything.
So that's why you would go around.
Right.
And the other thing that I found out is there's a community emergency response team in my area, and they are looking for hams to help out in emergencies, right,
A
Don?
lot of what we do, we have an organization known as ARES, which is Amateur Radio Emergency Service. It's part of the National Field Organization for the ARRL, and these are teams put together all over America. I'm the Nevada Section Emergency Coordinator, and what we do is we have various teams that provide communications backup during disasters. The CERT people a lot of times will come to us as ARES, and what they will say is, we want you to train our neighborhood people in how to operate radios. What is correct protocol? Right. How do radios operate, and how can you use them effectively to serve your community?
Yeah. So there's so much you can do. The opportunities are endless.
Endless.
It all starts by going to ARRL.org, finding out where the tests are, where your club is, studying up, and
getting started.
Get started, because then that's when it all goes from there.
And you can do it yourself.
And you can.
And the other thing is you can also go to the ARRL website, look up the division that you live in, the area you live in, and contact some of your section officials, like the section manager, like Bill, and other people, and they can turn you on to and point you in the right direction for your specific area to get you started.
That's really great. Don, KQ6FM.
That's a vanity call sign. I'm a commercial broadcaster.
You know, I don't know how I knew, but I thought you might have a radio kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Come on. Tell them about the voice shot.
Well, I have a company. We do commercial broadcast production from coast to coast. And one of them, we have Comcast right here in the Bay Area, is a client of ours.
You'll never know who you'll meet on ham. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Scott Wilkes.
Hey man, look at me rocking.
Tom on the radio. Leo Laporte, the tech guy, 8888. Ask Leo. That's the phone number. We're at PACIFICON, the big ham convention in Santa Clara at the Marriott Hotel here. We'll be for another hour if you want to come by and say hi. And guess who's on the line? Scott Wilkinson, our home theater guru. He hosts a show called Home Theater Geeks every Monday, 1:30 p.m. Pacific on TWiT.tv. He's also the online editor for Home Theater Magazine. Hello, Scott.
Hey, Leo. Sounds like you're having a great time there at PACIFICON.
It is really fun, yeah. Now tell me, what's up with you?
Well, tons of stuff as always. Got a million listener and reader questions.
Well, pick one and we'll answer it. How about that?
Do. Roger Price in Utah says he wants to record over-the-air digital HD broadcasts. He wants a standalone box with a hard drive, DVR, and he doesn't want to pay any type of rental or programming fee. And I say,
huh?
Perfect solution.
Oh, you have one.
I do. It's called the Channel Master TV.
Yeah, somebody called the show a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't know, but a number of people in the chat room recommended that. They just got acquired, though, right?
I don't know that. I hadn't heard that. That may well be. And if so, then we don't know what the future holds.
Yeah, you could still buy them on, it's kind of like a TiVo for broadcast, right?
Exactly. And for what's called Clear QAM, QAM, which is unencrypted cable.
Not that there's much of that anymore.
That is correct. There isn't much of that anymore, but it does exist. And even better, this Channel Master TV will also receive what's called over-the-top, OTT, or in other words, online video streaming. It has a Vudu app in it, so you can get stuff from Vudu at least, if not others. So that is another advantage of this particular thing, because it takes advantage of at least some of this online, or what's now called over-the-top video. I'm not quite sure why they call it that, to tell you the truth.
Over the top I don't either.
Or over the top, and that's a term that's only just now started to be having been used. I don't know, in the last less than a year.
You know, it's a shame, because this means that really, if you wanted to use a DVR, unless you're willing to use this solution, you almost have to get a cable or a satellite connection.
Yes, correct. And this guy wants to cut the cable, as we've now heard this term a lot.
Yeah. Well, if you want to cut the cable, I think part of that is getting your stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
And so really the only thing that remains is these live local stations.
Right.
And of course you would want that for sports or news or Academy Awards, that kind of thing.
And in fact, local broadcast HD TV, as you and I have both said on the show before, is among the best quality HD you can get. And it's free.
Well, yeah, but recording it's another matter entirely.
Exactly, which is where this Channel Master comes in, and I do hope, if they just got acquired, that the new company will keep making this product and bringing it out. I haven't looked at it myself yet, but I'm really looking forward to checking it out. I'm going to ask them for a review sample. I'm going to do a review, because a lot of people are asking about this, as you know.
Well, Channel Master, you can buy it online. If you Google Channel Master, you can also get it on Amazon.com. Have you used these?
No, I haven't yet, and I really want to, because there seems to be so much interest in it that I'm going to definitely check it out. I use TiVo for over-the-air.
Yeah.
I really like it, but it has a subscription fee.
Right.
Which,
this is the only way to do it without paying.
What's that?
This is the only way to do it without paying.
That's right.
Scott Wilkinson, Home Theater Magazine at hometheater.com. He's the online editor. What's your poll this week?
My poll this week is having to do with the new Sharp Elite, the new really super cool Sharp LCD TV that looks like it could be a Kuro killer.
$7,000.
$6,000 for the 60-inch, $8,500 for the 70-inch. And the question is, can an ultra-premium flat panel succeed in the marketplace? The Kuro did not, even though it was the best flat panel TV you could buy, period, end of story. Pioneer got out of the TV business, and now Sharp is trying to get into it. I've just helped my colleague Tom Norton unpack and set up the new Sharp TV for review, and he's got it sitting right next to his Kuro, so we're going to be able to look at it side by side. Very exciting. And I'm sure it's going to look fabulous, but will it survive at that super high price? I don't know. I'd love to know what people think. So go to hometheater.com and vote in the poll.
Thank you, Scott Wilkinson, our home theater guy. Scott Wilkinson joins us every week, usually a little earlier in the day, but I'm glad he could make it through on our broadcast today. And we invite you to go to hometheater.com or listen to his show at twit.tv every Monday, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern, or go to twit.tv/HTG. We'll go back. Now it's time for Carnig in West Hollywood. You're very patient, Carnig. Thanks for holding on. Leo Laporte, the tech guy.
For taking my call. I'm in a very dark place. I feel like I walked into a room and there's no exit.
Oh, no. What happened?
I made the mistake of installing Lion, and I'm trying everything. I've been in tears for 2 days trying to get out of this. Apparently the Apple Store is no help. It's like a trap.
So you were running Snow Leopard?
Oh, yeah.
And you opened the App Store and you bought Lion, $30, and you downloaded it and installed it, and what happened?
I hate it. And not only that, but I have some business apps that I can't use with it. And I'm involved in the stock market and overseeing people's portfolios, and the stock market opens tomorrow and I'm dead.
Why do you say that?
Well, because I need these applications in order to manage the portfolios. They're
right.
Proprietary apps.
Unfortunately, this is often the case, by the way, with these specialty apps, that they aren't kept up to date. You know, when you're running, and just use this, everybody listen, this is a word of warning. Before you upgrade your operating system, you want to make sure that everything works. And especially these line of business apps that are kind of specialty apps, because frequently they do things that maybe make them incompatible. So, Carnig, the only way you can get it back, you can't uninstall Lion.
Yeah.
You have to get your Snow Leopard disk and rebuild your system.
I just put the Snow Leopard disk in, and it wouldn't let me load onto.
Yeah, it won't let you downgrade.
Yeah, I'm.
So what you have to do is get your data off that hard drive.
Got everything saved.
Well, then you're good. Then you're actually not going to be in as bad shape as you think. You got the apps. You got your data.
I went to disk utility, and all I could do was erase free.
Right. You have to start over. You have to repartition that drive, make it blank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's in the disk utility, not the format part, the partition part.
Right.
You'll need to boot off the Snow Leopard disk to do that, because it's not going to let you erase itself. So you have to start up, put the Snow Leopard disk in, restart the machine, hold down the C key. That'll say boot from the CD. It's going to take longer to boot. Then you've got the installer running, and then you go to the utilities, the disk utility, and partition the drive, erase it, format it, install Snow Leopard, then restore your apps, reinstall your data, and you're back to Snow Leopard.
Oh, that's wonderful. Right now, I'm installing Snow Leopard on my external hard drive, because that's the only choice I have.
Well, that's another thing you can do, actually, and that's not a bad thing to do. Then when you boot, you have the choice of Lion or Snow Leopard by holding down the Option key when you boot, and it'll boot to the external drive just as if it's a regular computer. That's not a bad way to go. You might want to do that to keep both operating systems.
I know, I've heard you say that before, but if I then is that going to be dependent on the speed that's coming from the external hard drive, or?
Yeah, it is, and it will be slower if it's USB. If it's FireWire, it's faster. I know they don't have FireWire on the newer machines, but it will be acceptable. And once the operating system starts up, your apps will probably run just as fast as before. Carnig, I'm sorry you had the problem, but I'm glad I think we got it fixed.
Yeah.
Well, look at you, Leo Laporte here, the tech guy, and it's time to talk tech. Computers, the internet, cell phones, camcorders, MP3 players, home theater. Chris Marquardt, our photo guy, joins us in a bit. But we're also here to talk about the original geeks, the original nerds, the guys and gals who started it all with ham radio, amateur radio operators. I'm at PACIFICON, which is an amateur radio fest that's going on right now in Santa Clara, California, at the Marriott Hotel here. And, I was invited by this fella here. John is the president of MDARC, the Mount Diablo Amateur Radio Club, K3ZJJ. Nice to see you, John.
Oh, I'm so happy to see you. I'm also the chairman of this convention, PACIFICON, which has been sponsored by MDARC for years. But I am proud to say to everyone that Leo is a member of MDARC.
I am.
And
it's
he
my
passed,
first club.
That's right.
Yeah.
And he passed his technician license and his general class license
At your exams.
At our exams,
Yep.
and I expect he'll be an extra class.
I already promised my VE, my examiner, that I would take. I'm not taking the test with anybody else. I'm going to take the extra with him. I already failed it once.
Oh, well, I won't tell you how many times I failed the extra. They got tired of seeing me.
So tell me a little bit about clubs, because it seems like that is the core, really the heart and soul of ham radio is clubs. They're all over. There are many, even in one area, there may be 3 or 4 ham radio clubs.
It is the heart of ham radio. And MDARC is the largest ham radio club west of Dayton. We have so many different facets. We operate repeaters from Mount Diablo.
Let me stop.
Okay.
Repeaters.
What's a repeater?
What is a repeater?
Well, it's a radio and transmitter linked together such that if you transmit on one frequency and it receives it, it will retransmit it on a second frequency.
So I have my little handy talkie. It's really no bigger than a walkie-talkie. And it, instead of trying to go all the way across the country or even, all the way across the state, it will go to a repeater that's up in a mountain usually, right?
Well,
and that repeater takes my signal and repeats it to another ham radio operator.
And Mount Diablo, MDARC is the short, Mount Diablo Amateur Radio Club. We're fortunate in that we have the best radio site in the entire world.
It's called Mount Diablo.
It's called Mount Diablo, a mere 3,800 feet, plus another 400 feet of antenna.
And you have a clear view, clear shot from Mount Diablo to all of Northern California, pretty much.
Well,
there's nothing in your way.
Nothing is in the way. We actually, the only limitations on our repeaters in the top of Mount Diablo is the curvature of the Earth. If you can imagine that. It's easy to hit our repeater with a handheld on Mount Lassen. We can't hit Mount Shasta. We can't hit Mount McKinley. Why? Because they're below the radio horizon. They're below
you can't see them.
The curvature of the Earth.
It curves away.
And but other than that, our repeaters have a radius of over 200 miles.
It's really fun. So you broadcast, you transmit to the repeater transmits to you on, and you'd be amazed at the people you can talk to. Now you brought Pat along with you. Pat is WA6 MHZ megahertz.
Megahertz, right?
Hey, Pat.
And we are grateful for Pat because he has worked with the kids. He's taught them how to solder, how to build kits.
That's neat. There's actually a table here where there's soldering irons all set up, and kids are coming by. They're doing hula hoops and saying
kids,
Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot, Hotel, like that, right?
Yeah.
On the hula hoop.
and we had a 20 by 60 foot area set aside for them, and it was overcrowded. Next year, it has
that's
to
great.
be bigger.
You must be happy, but you're also the curator of the museum.
Yes, the Crest Radio Museum, which is near El Cajon, California.
What do you have there?
Lots and lots of junk. We've got well over 2,000 of the vintage amateur radios dating back to the 20s, and a few broadcast radios too, but mostly concentrating on amateur radio. Virtually, if you can think of a radio, there's one in the museum.
Wow, that's neat. What's the web address for you guys?
Well, I got to get a website. I have a Flickr.
You don't have a website?
I know. I got to get a. I got a Flickr website though.
What's your Flickr channel?
WA6MHZ. If you go on Flickr, you can see all the radios you ever wanted to see.
I like it. WA6
and some pictures of cats.
Whiskey Alpha 6.
Mike Hotel Zebra.
Thank you. And then there all these pictures. I'm looking right now on Flickr. All these pictures are online there.
Yeah, there's just hundreds and hundreds of pictures of the radios being restored. We take radios we get out of the swap meet that are in just terrible condition, recondition them in every way, sometimes paint.
So these are all working.
Oh yeah, and repair them, shine them up, and they look brand new out of the factory. Work just like they did back in 1930, 1950.
We talked earlier about how ham radio seems to have a lot of niches. This is yet another niche, is these restoring these old radios. That's really cool, Pat. And standing next to you, Pete Harris, KE6ZIW. Hi, and you're part of the PACIFICON event.
Yes, I'm the Public Services Coordinator for Mount Diablo Amateur Radio Club. One of the many facets of radio, ham radio, is public services as opposed to emergency services.
Okay, now that's a good distinction. So we've talked a little bit about the emergency services ham provide. What is a public service?
Public service, we provide radio communications, safety type support for various community events. The MS Society Walk, the March of Dimes Walk, Save Mount Diablo.
So you've seen people on these charity walks with radios in their hands. Very often they're amateur radio operators who
Absolutely.
are helping out.
Absolutely. We have teams of ham radio operators. Usually for a given event there's a net control ham, and then there are maybe 7 or 8 or 10 or 15 other hams who are positioned at various checkpoints or aid stations. In vehicles on the road, if there's a long bike ride or a long run, to kind of patrol the course.
It's fun, isn't it?
And it's kind of coordinated. Communication is coordinated by the the net control ham.
It's really great. Well, I see, Pat, that you brought something along here.
Yes.
Is this from the Crest?
Yes, this
Radio
is from the
Museum?
Crest Radio Museum, and we want you to see it, Leo, and experience this for yourself.
It's wrapped in bubble wrap. I'm going to hold it up to the
And-
microphone so everybody listening on radio at home can see it. Wow, is that a tube?
That's right. That is a authentic Audion made by Lee DeForest.
Wait a minute. Now, I know about the Audion tube. That's quite famous. Lee DeForest invented television.
That's right. This is a triode made in approximately 1906.
Wow.
And
Was
that's-
this a precursor to television?
Oh, it's a precursor to everything radio.
Wow, the Audion.
They were doing telegraph and over the lines before they got this going.
These were used to amplify and transmit.
Yes, Lee DeForest found that if he placed a voltage on the grid, things happened on the plate current. And he discovered amplification, but really didn't understand how it worked. But he did some more work, and later on the Audions were improved. But that is one of his prototypes. That is the only one of its kind in the world.
This is huge. This must be hugely valuable. I mean, this is a historic artifact.
Yes.
And I appreciate you letting me touch it.
Yes, and don't drop it.
I will not drop it. Were these hand-blown glass originally?
Yes. It's all hand-blown glass, and if you look at carefully, you can see the grid and plate were handmade by Lee with his needle-nose pliers back in 1906.
That is a lot of history right there. You know what's funny is every ham who takes a technician license and then later the general license has to learn how this works, because that's really the fundamental technology that all radio, even the radio you're listening to right now, uses. It's quite amazing. It's so neat to see that, Pat. Thank you for bringing that along. I really appreciate it. We're at the PACIFICON conference, which is a yearly convention. Now, John, we got to give you a little plug, because next year this isn't going to be a regional event. This is going to be the National Ham Convention.
It will be the National Ham
So
Radio Convention.
Put it on your calendars, folks, and we'll see you here in next October. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. I want to take some more calls right after this. Leo Laporte, the tech guy, 8888. Ask Leo. I'm going to go back to the phones in just a second. Before I do, though, I want to say hi to Bruce Perrins. Bruce is an old friend. I've known Bruce for quite some time. In fact, he's kind of a legend in open source. If you're a geek, you probably know the name. You worked at Debian. You're a former project leader of that very famous Linux distribution. Maybe people don't know you also were at Pixar, where you did some of the studio tools for Toy Story 2 and A Bug's Life. But you're a ham.
I am Kilo 6 Bravo Papa.
And I
That's
think
my other name.
I almost want to say a ham first and foremost.
Well, I think ham radio got me into this
Yeah.
because when I started to work on Linux and open source, I was actually trying to make Linux for hams.
No kidding.
And I looked around for a source for that, and I found this Debian project, which was just 60 people at that time. And I ended up being Debian project leader. And then
They said, "You want to volunteer? Welcome. You're in charge."
Okay. And then as policy for Debian, I wrote what became the rules for open source.
The open source initiative was what was your thing.
So I actually announced open source to the world. But of course, I'm standing on the shoulders of Richard Stallman in that. And I
Eric
said
Raymond.
that once when Richard was there, and he covered his shoulders up.
He said, "Don't squish me."
Yeah.
Well, we have another thing to thank Bruce Behrens for, because one of the reasons I became a ham, for many years I wanted to do amateur radio, but I was put off by the need to know Morse code. It was a requirement even for the novice license. I had to have 5 words a minute, and even that was too much for me. You were one of the people who got rid of the code requirement.
Well, Leo, I've been thinking for a long time about bringing amateur radio into the future. And nothing I did kept people from using Morse code on the air. All we're doing is taking it off of the test, and it's gone from there now. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure we have frequencies. And if we don't look innovative, we're going to lose them. And unfortunately, all of that key tapping just doesn't look innovative.
Right.
And it kept people out for no reason.
So it kept people out, but you said that's a really important thing to remember, is that the reason those frequencies exist for amateur radio is that the ITU and the FCC kind of allocate them for amateur radio, but those frequencies are very, very valuable, and there's constant pressure from commercial interests to take those frequencies away.
Well, think about how much money cell phone companies make. Everybody wants to make money like that, and they can't get the frequencies. So what we really have is like an oil field. It's a multi-billion-dollar resource, and we have to defend it every second.
Yeah, yeah. By using it. And by getting more hams. Now, the good news is
public service,
yeah.
innovation,
Yep.
training young people about technology. It can't just be being a personal geek fest.
Right, right. And I think you've done a great job. In fact, I know you have, because since the code requirement was eliminated from the ham licensing, the number of hams has skyrocketed. It's gone up.
Not just because of that, because organizations like MDARC that runs this conference and ARRL are working on training young people too.
That's really exciting. One of the reasons I wanted to do this show here, and I promote ham radio as a new ham. I find it a really exciting, interesting hobby. But I really believe that for innovation to continue in technology, our young people can't just use it. They have to understand it. They have to understand how it works, so that not all of them will become innovators, inventors, creators, but a percentage will if they understand it. And so this is about taking something and saying, don't just consume it, create it, learn how it works, right?
Well, think about it this way. Where does innovation come from today? It comes from big companies like Apple, etc. And today we're getting the tools into the hands of individuals. Yeah. And a lot of things that I do are like that. Ham radio is the only way that you can run a global network without being a big corporation.
That's a really good point.
Okay, I work on open hardware, which is a way that you can get into making digital products. I work on open source, which is a way that you can share software development with people all around the world. So all of this has a common theme, and it's the individual and innovation.
We're always going to have big corporations. They're always going to pour a lot of money into this. But we've got to get people excited as individuals. I mean, if Wozniak hadn't created the Apple I computer out of his own love and spirit and interest in this stuff, and frankly because he'd been a ham and understood electronics, we wouldn't have a personal computer revolution.
It's also a power to the people thing.
I agree.
Because
I agree.
we want you to have control, not be controlled.
Right.
And a lot of people fear technology, and things like ham radio are great ways to learn about it and not fear it.
It's very accessible. Look, we interviewed a couple of girls, 22 and 11, who got their licenses as little kids, and they love technology. You know, Andrea is now studying aerospace at Georgia Tech because she felt it was accessible. She felt she could do it, and that you're right on. That's exactly what this is all about.
Yeah, so Andrea Hartog is a great example.
Yeah.
And I think she's like our next astronaut.
Isn't that great?
But
we just need a space program for her.
Yeah, my 11-year-old learned to solder here yesterday.
That's
He
great.
made a kit that worked.
That's really neat.
So this is great stuff that we can do.
I agree.
So one of the things that I've been talking about here today is Codec 2, which is speech compression in open source, that we can do digital radio for voice and have it all be stuff that we can control.
People don't realize that Skype is a proprietary codec that's owned by Microsoft now, and it's not something that you can mess around with, you can use, you have to license. So we need open source technologies that let us mess around with this kind of stuff.
Well, I think the codec in Skype may be open, but the rest of the protocol is not.
Yeah.
And the point here is that with this tech that's open source, we can encode 3.5 seconds of speech in a kilobyte, which isn't very much data at all.
Right.
And so we can have high-quality digital speech that way over the air. So that's one thing I'm working on. Open hardware, which was another topic I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, because we know about open source software,
Mhm.
but what is open hardware?
Open hardware is designs for physical objects, not just electronics, where the design is under the rules of open source. Everyone can share it, copy it, modify it, give it to their friends, make it commercially if they like. So this is sort of rejecting the usual rules of intellectual property.
And we've seen what that's done because, of course, of all the lawsuits with software patents, hardware patents, the lawsuits between Apple and Samsung and Microsoft and everybody, it really kills innovation. Billions of dollars go into these big fights, and they don't go into innovating and creating new products.
So we are making entire radio designs. There's one called HPSDR, where the entire design is open source. It's manufactured, hundreds of hams have it, and you can take your company and build them. There's a person who's making open polymerase chain reactions, so you can do genetic engineering at home.
That's the stuff that was used to decode the human genome, PCR.
Yes.
You're saying that you could do that at home?
A $600 home genetic engineering kit. Isn't that scary?
That's amazing. Bruce Parent, so great to see you. So great to know you're still fighting the fight. K6PP, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Lee.
Leo Laporte, the tech guy. We are at a ham convention. It's called PACIFICON here in Santa Clara, California today, all day, celebrating amateur radio, taking calls too, and I'm going to get back to the phones in a second, but I saw this guy and I said, I got to talk to him, because the guy I'm standing next to is the guy I started with in broadcast radio, in college radio. He was the station manager when I was the program director of our college station, Eric Schwartz. And even then, Eric, we thought you were a nerd because you were, and we even talked about this, building a computer back in the dorm room.
It was scary, wasn't it?
That was 1976, something
76,
like that?
77, somewhere back then, yeah.
Eric Schwartz now is, well, he was a ham then, which I didn't know at the time. But now, and went on to a very successful career as an entrepreneur. He started a very famous hard drive company in the early days, Mountain Computer.
Well, actually, I was head of engineering there. I didn't
Head of
start
engineering,
there, yeah.
okay. And but now he is the guy, one of the co-founders of one of the few American-made ham radios, Elecraft. When people say the word Elecraft, they often just go, nice. It's a very high quality brand used by hams, chiefly in the high frequency ranges, right?
In the shortwave range where you can talk around the world, though we do make VHF stuff too for point-to-point.
You brought your new radio. This is
a cute little radio. It's a KX3, which is a portable HF radio station.
You know what I love about this? First of all, it's small enough to have in your car. You can actually mount that, and it almost looks like a car stereo, except the funny thing is, and this is optional, at the bottom, it's got a paddle for Morse code.
Yeah, you can touch it. It'll make noise here.
Do people actually send Morse code in their car?
Well, hopefully not while they're driving. I don't know, there's no law against sending Morse code while driving.
I don't think the Congress has caught up with the big problem of Morse coding in your car.
Absolutely. It's sort of like texting while driving. I don't think that's a good idea.
But you can all. But now this is, I've seen a lot of rigs where people do talk on the radio in the
Sure.
car.
And absolutely, you have a hand microphone, and it's legal to do that. So.
And what is it instead of a cell phone? What are they saving on their cell phone?
No, absolutely not. Ham radio is sort of like the original social network. Just like you talk on the internet with your friends and stuff. We do it in ham radio. We have friends all around the world, and so you can get on from your car and talk to some guy in Florida or somebody in Japan or somebody around the world. That's pretty cool when you're driving down the road like that.
What kind of antenna do you need on your car?
Actually, not. Well, it may look a little geeky. It's got to be sort of nerdy. For the shortwave, you need longer antennas.
Right, one of those whip antennas.
It's usually a whip antenna off the back with a loading coil, a coil of wire to make it actually look longer electrically, because the shortwave bands are longer wavelengths.
Yeah,
so
normally if you're on a 20-meter band, you want a pretty long piece of wire.
Quarter wavelength antenna at that. So 5 meters long at least. Yeah. So
you don't want that on your car.
Not ideally. You hit a few overpasses if you go over. So we actually shorten them down a little bit. But actually, you can make them fairly efficient, and they're a lot of fun to operate while you're on the road. And it's good for emergency stuff, too.
This is a beautiful little transceiver, the KX3. 15 watts?
Yeah, 15 watts in the basic unit, and we have a 100-watt amp that you can stick under the seat of your car or on your desk next to you.
There's one thing we haven't really talked about, the technology of ham. 10, 15 watts. Now, we're probably on many of the radio stations we're on, we're 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 watt transmitters. 10 or 15 watts, I can go around the world
Yeah,
with
absolutely can, because the receivers in these radios are typically a lot more sensitive than what's inside of your typical AM radio, for instance, in your car or your home. On top of that, we've got fairly advanced filtering features to filter out the noise. So we can hear a lot weaker signals, like they're in the same room with us. And also, we're sort of, as the hobby, we're experts in bouncing those signals off the atmosphere and knowing when it's going to work to where you're going.
That's part of the art. This reminds me a little bit about fishing. You have to kind of know.
It's like fly fishing, though, too. You almost, you sort of set it up where you're casting out there to see what you're going to catch.
Yeah, and
that's
you understand how the meteorological conditions affect the radio wave propagations, and you mess around with it. And of course, the gratifying thing is, you're sitting here on a radio, a 15-watt radio in your car, and you're talking to Japan. You're feeling pretty good.
Oh, it's pretty cool. One time I was planning a scuba diving trip to Micronesia. I didn't know where I was going to go. I pointed my antenna towards the South Pacific, and I called out, calling CQ, calling anybody, South Pacific, and within 15 minutes I had somebody in a small island in the middle of Micronesia.
What fun.
And then they told me about all the little places that are off the grid that you could go to, and it was very neat.
Elecraft, ELECRAFT.com. How much is the KX3?
KX3 is under $1,000. The basic unit runs, we are just introducing it now, it'll be between $799 and $899 for the radio.
And how much to get the
little paddle? We haven't set that yet. Probably another $100 or so for that. You don't have to get the Morse code paddle. You can just use the microphone.
I just think every car should have Morse code paddle in it.
One cool thing about this, it also does data modes, Leo. It does PSK31 data modes and RTTY. It'll actually decode it and scroll it across the display for you.
So there's people at home, they must have a computer hooked up to their radio. They're creating these PSK.
Yeah, basically it's digital data, computer to computer over the internet. What you can do with this also with a computer hooked up to it. But this one, if you're just casually tuning around and say, what are those guys talking about? You can tune and actually watch it scroll by on the display.
So sometimes people say, well, what do you need to learn Morse code anymore for? Because I can just use these data modes and send plenty of text. It isn't utility particularly.
It is and it isn't. Morse code, one, it's fun. It's just like like another language.
Yeah.
But also, it has the advantage of about a 10-to-1 improvement in effective strength, signal to noise over voice, because we can use very narrow bandwidths for Morse code. And
so you can go really far.
So with a 15-watt radio on Morse code, you can go like you can with a 150-watt radio on
You go around
voice.
the world.
Yeah, but it's just fun. It's just another language more than anything
It's so
else.
fun. Eric, it's so nice to see you again. Eric Schwartz and I went to college together.
We're not that old yet.
40 years ago, almost. Actually, our 35th reunion is coming up. So
that'll be a lot of fun.
It's great to see you again, and congratulations on the success of Elecraft.
Thank you.
It's legendary. WA6HHQ.
Ham headquarters. That's my new phonetics. I've had the call for 40 years, too.
But you figured out what it means.
Now I know
finally.
what it means now. Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to
thank
see
you.
you again. Thanks for coming by. I really appreciate it. Let's get back to the phones, and Chip is on the line from Corona Del Mar, California. Hi, Chip. Leo Laporte, the tech guy.
Hi, Leo. Thanks for all you do. I'm building a new PC, and you've talked a bunch of times about having an SSD for Windows and programs, and it's been
I love these solid-state drives. They use the same memory as in your camera, or they're very fast for both reading and writing, mostly for reading. And I think nowadays many computers are coming with SSDs because it just improves boot time and launch time for apps. It's great.
Well, I'm trying to do this, and I've been looking around for answers how to move the users folder to a D drive or an E drive. The answer that I trust the best so far is at answers.microsoft.com, and it's real complicated.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that complicated. In fact, the truth is, even if you're not using an SSD, I like the idea of having the operating system and the programs on one drive, or it could be a virtual drive, a partition, the C drive, and then on a D drive, that's the data drive. That's where I put all the data. And by separating them, you get some real advantages. Chiefly, if you have to reinstall the operating system, you don't have to worry about losing your data. You just wipe that, C drive and start over. So it isn't that hard. Both Windows and Macintosh give you tools to do it. On a modern version of Windows 7, it's actually fairly simple. You can right-click on the properties of your Documents folder or your Pictures folder, or your Music folder, and you just have to tell it where it lives. Used to have to use TweakUI to do that. You remember in the earlier versions of Windows, but now it's built right into the Windows Explorer. Just right-click on Documents and go to, I think it's the advanced. I don't have Windows in front of me, but I think it's the Advanced tab, and you can literally say, this lives on the D drive now.
Okay.
So it's much simpler. Are you using Windows 7?
Yes.
I would presume you're using the latest version of Windows. Yeah, maybe those instructions are for earlier versions of Windows when it really was a lot more complicated. But now it's fairly simple. Just go to right click on the folder you want to move. Go to Properties. I think, let me look at this. Is it the Advanced Properties? Yeah, I think it might be in the Advanced Properties. You can change the location. Earlier versions of Windows, they had a little program called TweakUI that would do the same thing. Yeah, who can forget? Thank gosh we don't have to use TweakUI anymore. But it is a good idea. I think it's the best way to actually arrange your hard drive if you can do that. Helen in Los Angeles, Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Hi, Helen.
Hi.
Hey, welcome to the show. What can I do for you? Thanks for holding on, too, by the way.
No problem. Thank you. I'm so excited. Okay. Yay. I have two.
Oh, rats. I hear that magic music. That means we got to take a break. Helen, you're going to be next when we come back after the break. Don't go anywhere. I want to help you. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Leo Laporte, the tech guy. 8888 Ask Leo, that's the phone number. A few more minutes before the end of the show, but now I got to get back to Helen. Poor Helen. I picked her up, and then I had to put her back on hold. You've been very patient, Helen. Leo Laporte here. What can I do for you?
Problem. Hi. I have two questions, actually. I would like to download YouTube videos. Is there any program that I can download YouTube? Number two.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Number two, I would like to buy a notebook computer, and then I would like to be able to type Chinese and able to, because sometimes the little kid, I like to touch my computer. I need a really sturdy computer, and I need to be able to do some graphic on my computer and do a lot of PowerPoint and use word processors.
Okay, so let's start with the first question. There are a number of sites that let you put in a YouTube video address, the URL we call it, and they'll give you the file for download. YouTube does not normally let you download. You can't just right-click on it and download. It's often it's Flash, and so you can't just save it. But there's a site, actually a number of them, but I'll give you one, a site called KeepVid, KeepVid, just like Keep Video. Keepvid.com, and if you go to that website, you enter in the, you'll have to have the YouTube URL. So what you do is you go to the video you want. Is this for your kid? You want Happy Tree Friends or something on your hard drive? You go to the video that you want, you click the share button, and it'll give you a address. You copy that and you paste it into keepvid.com, and then you can download the video.
Oh, thank you, because I really enjoy it.
Yeah, of course. Now, they also have a bookmarklet, which is kind of cool, that you can drag to your browser toolbar, and then when you're watching a video, you just click the bookmarklet. It'll save it. That's even easier.
Wow,
great. So that'll work for you. Now, sturdy computer that also works in Chinese. Now, the thing about the Chinese is you're going to have to buy an international version of Windows and a computer with an international keyboard.
Yeah.
The absolute company I recommend makes the sturdiest computers is Lenovo. Guess what? Chinese company.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, Lenovo.com. And I bet you if you go to their Chinese site, you can get the Chinese version of the Lenovo laptop as well. It's owned by the Chinese government, so I would imagine that they make Chinese keyboards in Chinese language. If you go to their China version, you read Chinese, I take it.
Yes.
Yeah, lenovo.cn,
Huh?
and you could, I'm sure, get anything you need.
All right. What if the laptop, I just want to get like a Dell or any other computer that is good?
Well, Lenovo's very good. They make, now I like Dell. Dell's great, but Lenovo makes, they bought IBM's ThinkPad business, and they make a very robust, nice laptop. I generally recommend it for business users or users who need a solid computer. And so Lenovo's quite good. Do you want Windows to have Chinese language on the menus and all that, or you just want to input Chinese text?
I would like to use Windows because all my other computer at school will let me use Windows. So
Right.
if I got
So if you just want to enter Chinese, of course you can use in the control panels. You can change the keyboard. They have international keyboards to a Chinese keyboard, but if you want to see the Chinese ideographs on the keyboard itself, if you want to be able to use Chinese in the menus and all that, then you need a Chinese computer. You actually need the Chinese version of Windows as well. So certainly Lenovo will sell that to you. I wouldn't be surprised if Dell did. Dell makes excellent computers. I often recommend them. I think Lenovo is my favorite brand, believe it or not, for Windows laptops. I just think they make really nice Windows laptops, and your toddler can bang on it, and it will survive. It'll do pretty well. Jenny in San Diego, Leo Laporte, the tech guy. Hi, Jenny.
Hey, Leo, it's so great to talk to you. I'm sure you get tired of hearing that.
No, keep saying it.
Very, very exciting. So what I've been having used HP pretty much, I don't know, for the past 20, 30 years. I need to get a new laptop. I'm on my computer about 16, 18 hours a day with my business. I used to have two side by side, and the other one kind of went down. So I want to get a laptop. I have a dear friend in another state. I've never seen hers, and can't believe I'm saying this. I've never been in a Mac store, and she said, get one, go into the store. So I'm going today. I'm going in. It's a really great computer and laptop. And what do you recommend? And what do you think?
Well, first of all, Apple has brilliantly reinvented the retail experience. Now, this is one of the things you credit Steve Jobs with as terms of innovation. He said, people said, no, there's not enough stuff in the shelves. There's too much space in your stores. He said, no, I want lots of space. I want people to be able to take their time. I want them to look at the computers, be able to play with them. He really reinvented retailing, especially for technology. The Apple Store is an amazing experience, whether you want an Apple computer or not. But I think it's a very good idea to go in there. I use an Apple MacBook Air. We were talking about SSDs. The MacBook Airs, and actually you can get solid-state drives even on the MacBook Pros. Putting a solid-state drive in there really makes it faster. It's not a faster processor. These are comparable machines to Windows machines. In fact, they're pretty much the same hardware. I run Windows on my MacBook Air. I reboot it into Windows, and it's just like a Windows machine. So speed is not the issue. To get a faster machine, though, one of the things I've noticed makes a big difference is having a solid-state drive. It boots faster. Applications launch faster. And the MacBook Air, if you don't need an optical drive, you don't need a DVD or CD drive, it's just great. It's so lightweight. You'll carry it with you everywhere. It feels very fast because of that solid-state drive. And it starts at $9.99, which for a Macintosh is a pretty aggressive price. Of course, you get PCs that are cheaper, but I think a Mac is a great choice for you, Jenny. And I would look at the MacBook Airs. Smaller hard drives because they're solid-state. They don't have optical drives, but that makes them smaller and thinner. If you don't need the big drive and you don't need the optical drive, I think they're a very, very good choice. Michael in Tahunga, California. It's Tahunga, right?
Yes. Leo, my problem is that I've had Sound Blaster Audigy Platinum several years now, and when I installed it, I had no problems with the full-on install. This card comes with an Oddity drive plus a card. When I took the machine out, cleaned it, dusted off, and all of that, then brought it back in and plugged all the cables back in and everything, I had no sound card that I could pick up off of my speakers when I plugged into the back.
I hate that.
Yeah, that's a real fun thing that troubleshoot. Although if I plug the headphones into the Audigy drive itself, I get sound there.
Now, that was a great inspired idea. You did a little test, and in fact, you figured it out because the card's working or you wouldn't hear something coming out of the headphone jack. So I got to think it's either the cables or the speakers that are attached to it. So that was a really good thing to do, Michael. You plug headphones in, I hear it. Well, now we know the card's working, the operating system's working, the driver's working, everything in the computer's working. It's something after the sound card. So check your cabling, check your speakers. That's what's going to be wrong. Since it happened when you kind of messed around with it, I think it's very likely that something shook loose, and it might not even be a big deal fixing that. I think that's probably the solution. Hey, I really want to thank the folks at the Mount Diablo Amateur Radio Club, MDARC, for putting on a great show and for letting us come down here and do the radio show from PACIFICON at the Santa Clara Marriott Hotel. Thanks to the Marriott, too. Boy, they've been great. They set us up with bandwidth and all the stuff we needed to do a radio show here. I think we'll come back next year for the big national convention. I hope you've learned a little bit about ham radio. I thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week. I'm Leo Laporte, the Tech Guy. Have a great geek week.